Good morning.
Good morning.
Today I'd like to talk about how spiritual awareness can change the way we see the world. Now, every Sunday, we repeat the declarations of the principles of the Spiritualist Church. 1, we believe in infinite intelligence. 2, we believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. 3, we affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitutes true religion. So here's what those statements have come to mean to me. In my distant past, I used to be a very competitive, passive-aggressive person. Let me illustrate what I mean when I say passive-aggressive, competitive. If I was walking down the street and someone walking faster would pass by me, I would speed up my pace and catch up with them and regain the lead. There was an occasion or two where I must admit I actually passed by the building I was heading to because I was trying to win the race. Of course, participating in sports would have probably satisfied that drive, but my body in my early life had difficulty making all its parts operate in sync. I was pretty clumsy and uncoordinated. I had trouble catching baseballs, dribbling basketballs, or even running without tripping over my own feet. As for the passive-aggressive part, I learned early in my life that being one of the few or being often the only black kid in the area meant that I was considered a problem to be dealt with. So even if the other kids didn't like each other, they could all agree on one thing: they didn't like me. So rather than aggressively pursuing leadership roles, I learned to survive by becoming the indispensable supporter and trusted advisor. The result was that I would eventually inherit the leadership role because after a while it only made sense. But the downside of that approach was that holding myself back like that was very frustrating. So by the time I was 30 years old, I was on the verge of an ulcer. Stomach cramps and severe headaches were an everyday occurrence in my life as a result of the stress of the internal war of holding myself back. Things began to change for me in the 1980s when I got to San Francisco and began my spiritual training. And I became more spiritually aware of what was going on inside me and around me. I learned that working with spirit and allowing spirit to work through me had several effects. 1, it made me actually aware in a number of ways that I actually was an individualized expression of infinite intelligence. 2, it stilled my mind and gave me an ability to stay calm in many situations. 3, it empowered my intuitive senses and gave me the vision to see the underlying factors affecting the turmoil that was going on around me. 4, it instilled a new level of confidence because I began to have knowledge that spirit can and does resolve problems. 5, it created a sense of expectancy because it brought synchronicities that could deliver opportunities to me. 6, it charged my aura with an energy that brought the power to transform situations by my very presence. One of the most important things I learned in my spiritual training is that the ability to shut out the chaos of physical reality is critical. You see, your mind and spirit have to be quiet in order to access your spiritual connection to infinite intelligence. So taking time out, space out, to access your higher self is important. And as you access your higher self more and more, you begin to notice an increased ability for equanimity. Equanimity is defined as a state of psychological stability and composure, which is undisturbed by experience of or exposure to emotions, pain, or other phenomena that might cause others to lose the balance of their minds. Because of this increased equanimity, I was able to see that acts of anger and hostility that people commit were actually expressions of fear. Fear is that overriding sense, the dread that plagues our society and is fed ceaselessly by major media. Being sold all the time. Alarm, alarm, screech. What do they call it? The screecher meter. Eventually, because of the growing level of peace within my aura, I began to discover that my very presence could change situations. I remember several years back in San Francisco walking back from lunch with a few of my coworkers down Market Street in San Francisco. We were passing an area around Powell and Market where homeless people hang out. Suddenly, in that group, one of the homeless men pulled out a large butcher knife and began angrily threatening them to kill the man standing in front of him. It was a pretty ugly situation. But my higher self saw something in that man, the man with the knife. And before I knew it, I was standing next to him. I had walked in through the crowd and up to this man, and I said to him, "You don't want to do that." And he looked up at me and he said, "Who the F are you?" And I said, "I am someone who cares about you, and I know you don't really want to hurt anybody." He stared at me for a minute. I could see that he was confused and disbelieving, like, what is this? Who is this? But finally, he lowered his knife, and he began to talk to me, and he began to tell me what was bothering him and why he was so angry. And eventually he gave me his knife. I told him to leave before the police came. Now my coworkers were shocked by what was happening and what I had done. But the truth was, in that moment, I was not really in control. I was not really myself. At that moment, I was an instrument of spirit. Throughout that whole incident, I was in a state of mental peace. And the words I spoke came not from my mind, but came from a space deep within me. Would I have done something like that before my spiritual training? Are you kidding? No way. No way. That would have frightened me. I wouldn't have known what to say. If I had been there and said something, I probably would have made the situation worse. No, something inside of me, spirit inside of me, saw what needed to be done, and it took over and brought it to bear. Now, another thing I learned is that forgiving myself opened me to a deeper level of spiritual awareness. You know, this is all being taught to us as we expose ourselves to Spirit and as we allow Spirit to move into us and elevate us. So, whereas the spiritual awareness elevated my sensitivity to the world, I began to be able to see the fear and distress in other people, no matter how well they were hiding it. My intuitive senses were heightened. And I began to learn that I should start teaching people how to forgive. I learned that I was growing more powerful in my presence, in my very being, because I had learned to forgive myself. One of the teachings of Carolyn Mace, who was an author and teacher and who gained fame as a medical intuitive because she could see the illness in people and direct doctors on how to treat them. But she did a lecture on PBS called 3 Levels of Power and How to Heal and How to Use Them. And she was saying that a large amount of our life force is tied up in the past. in events and memories in the past where pain and emotion lock them up. And it steals that energy from our present and makes us weaker. And what we have to do is go back into those memories and pull our energy out. And the only way we can pull that energy out is to learn how to forgive. She said, learning to forgive is the greatest gift that you could give to anyone. It is the most selfish act in the world, learning to forgive. And once all that energy is released, it comes right back to you. Blasts right into your aura, and you explode with the light of spirit. And you know what? People can see it. Well, some people can see it, those who see auras. But animals can see it. And babies can see it. Because animals and babies are operating at a level, a psychic level, a psychological level known as the alpha. And so they can see things that we cannot. They can see at a higher level. And just as an example, before we were locked down, I can recall months ago being at an airport, actually an airport in Atlanta. And there were a couple of babies in the area where I ended up sitting. One baby was having a tantrum. He would not be quieted down. His poor mother was trying to quiet him down, and he just was screaming. But I came and I sat down, and he looked at me and he stopped crying. And he just stared at me. And then another baby, on the side, also stopped fidgeting and stopped and stared at me. And they stared at me the whole time I was there until finally I got up and got a cup of coffee. We began to elevate ourselves into the world of spirit. Our aura begins to turn a blue, whereas most people's auras are kind of greens and reds and muddy. What happens when you begin working with spirit is your aura lightens up and begins to turn blue, and babies are fascinated by that. Spirit also brought me synchronicities, coincidences that aren't really coincidences. And those coincidences have provided me wonderful opportunities throughout my life. And also protection. When I was in San Francisco, I was a teacher of technology, among other things, and I was freelancing a lot. So I had to work in order to survive. And I had a car that wasn't that great at operating. It was usually on the verge of collapse. But I had to work, so I kept driving my car until I could save up enough money to take it to the garage and get it fixed. Finally, I had gathered enough money so that I could take my car to the garage. And one evening, I and drop it off in front of the garage, because since I didn't have a way back, I had to have somebody give me a ride. And the only way to get a ride was after somebody was working. So the garage was closed. I left the car in front of the garage, got a ride back home. Next morning, I called the garage to see how the car was doing. And the mechanic says, "Oh yeah, how did you get that car here?" I drove it and parked it. He says, "Nah, come on now, you didn't drive that car." He says, "If you tried to drive that car, it would have exploded." He said, "From the looks of this car, it's been in bad shape for a while. So how'd you get it here?" We couldn't even start it to get it into the garage. We had to push it to get it into the garage. This is the car I drove to the spot to get it fixed. And I realized that for however long, whatever few weeks it was, infinite intelligence, spirit had protected me and kept that car going, holding it together so that I could earn some money and stay alive. And finally, when I was able to take care of the problem, spirit let it go. And nobody else could drive it. Spirit. Spiritual awareness changed my life. Spiritual awareness changes the way that I look at life. One, it makes me acutely aware in many ways that I actually am an individualized expression of infinite intelligence. Two, it stills my mind and gives me the ability to stay calm in many situations. Three, it empowers my intuitive senses and gives me the vision to see the underlying factors affecting the turmoil that surrounds me. Four, it instilled a new level of confidence in me as I began to have knowledge that Spirit can and does resolve problems. Five, it created a sense of expectancy because Spirit brought synchronicities, and with those synchronicities came opportunities. Six, it charged my aura with an energy that brought the power to transform situations by my very presence. The point of this talk is that the first three principles of the Spiritualist Church are more than just a set of words. We believe in infinite intelligence. We believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. We affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitute true religion. Infinite intelligence is always with us. Not just on Sunday, not just here in the church, but every minute of every day. It is over us, under us, around us, and through us. Wherever we are, God is. If we allow infinite intelligence to do so, it will guide our lives and protect us in ways we cannot even imagine. So, in closing, I ask you to remember the words from the book of Luke, chapter 17, verse 21. Behold, the kingdom of God is within.
Thank you. Thank you for watching us. Please click on the thumbs up button below. And if you haven't already done so, please choose to subscribe. Remember, I'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions, your stories. I'd love to hear from you. So please use the comment section below the video. Remember, you can support this ministry by going to my website at bozemandevelopment.com and choosing Please Donate. Or you can use my Cash app at $Andre Amron. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your support. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, I am Reverend Andrew Bozeman, and this has been On the Wings of Your Mind.